The 10 poorest countries in Africa in 2023. Unsurprisingly, Africa is where the vast majority of the world's poor live. It's a tough reality, and unfortunately, Africa is home to 23 of the 27 poorest countries in the world, according to the World Bank. And 21 of the world's 55 lower middle-income countries are also in Africa. The 10 poorest countries in Africa are all over the place, from West Africa to the Indian Ocean and throughout sub-Saharan Africa to the Horn of Africa. These countries often face a combination of natural and man-made disasters, like economic insecurity, political instability and corruption, civil wars, and terrorist insurrections. And it's not just a matter of working hard to escape poverty in these poor countries, it's a constant struggle just to survive. But we're here to take a closer look at these 10 poorest countries in Africa in 2023 and see what can be done to help these individuals and communities break the cycle of poverty. We'll be ranking these countries based on GDP per capita, which is the total economic production of the country divided by the number of people, and gross national income per capita, which is the amount of money per person that stays in the country out of all the value of goods and services it produces. These figures can tell us a lot about each country's unique story. But let's not forget that behind all these statistics are real people fighting every day to make it through. Hello there. Welcome to another exciting video. Please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification button and comment. So, let's dive in and see the 10 poorest countries in Africa and see what we can do to help these countries and communities overcome poverty. 1. Burundi. It is sad to report that the poorest country in Africa in 2022 is Burundi. This small, landlocked country in Central East Africa has struggled with poverty for decades, with a poverty rate of more than 60%. Burundi is densely populated and lacks natural resources, making it difficult for many of its citizens to access basic necessities like clean water and healthcare. With a gross domestic product of $727 and a gross national income of $210 as of 2023, it's no surprise that Burundi is often included on the list of the poorest countries not just in Africa but in the world. But there is hope for reducing poverty in Burundi. Some ways to do this include improving the quality of healthcare, investing in education to increase accessibility, improving infrastructure to facilitate navigation, and creating a more welcoming environment for foreign direct investment. By addressing these issues, the country can work towards a future where the people of Burundi have the opportunity to thrive. 2. Central African Republic. The Central African Republic is an example of a country under a natural resources curse. With a GDP of $823 and a gross national income of $510, this country is endowed with impressive natural and mineral resources. Yet it has been unable to benefit from these riches and address the needs of its population. The country has a history of political instability, with 2 democratic transitions and 7 attempted coups d'état, 5 of which resulted in a change of power. The country also struggles with conflict, corruption, and economic instability, as well as a dependency on commodities, a weak private sector, and a lack of social cohesion. These challenges are further exacerbated by the country's vulnerability to external shocks, such as the 2013 civil war and the 2020 presidential elections, which sparked another conflict and dampened hopes for a peaceful transition of power. To overcome these challenges, the country must work to address the root causes of fragility by creating jobs, improving the management of its natural resources, and establishing a social contract. Only by addressing these issues can the country hope to build a more stable and prosperous future. 3. Democratic Republic of the Congo. It has a GDP of $843 and a gross national income of $550. The Democratic Republic of Congo (DRC) is another example of a country with a natural resource curse in Africa. Despite being home to vast mines of rare earth minerals essential for electric cars and cell phones, as well as being the world's leading supplier of cobalt since 1908, more than 80% of the Congolese population lives on less than $1.25 a day, the threshold for extreme poverty. This is due in part to the lack of formal economic opportunities in the country, as well as the legacy of political conflicts and instability, high rates of malnutrition and illness, and poor education. These issues have combined to make the DRC the 3rd poorest country in Africa. To address poverty in the DRC, the country should consider using its resources from diamonds, gold, coltan, and other minerals to fund investment in conflict-affected communities, improving access to water, education services, and agriculture support. These efforts could alleviate poverty and suffering, and by reducing fighting over limited resources, they could also strengthen incentives for peace. By taking these steps, we can work towards a brighter future for the people of the DRC. 4. Somalia. Somalia is the 4th poorest country in Africa, with a GDP of $888 and a gross national income of $310. This country has become synonymous with violence, lawlessness, and extreme poverty, with roots in civil conflict, limited resources, natural disasters, and a lack of an active central government. The conflict in Somalia often centers on the fight for access to basic resources like food and water, and about 43% of the population lives on less than $1 a day. The leading industry in the country is livestock production, and many Somalis rely on remittances sent back by expats to survive. But there are ways to improve the situation in Somalia. Strategies to create jobs, especially for young Somalis, can be crucial in lifting people out of poverty. Improving service provision for those disproportionately lacking access will be important in boosting human capital. Investment in resilience can also help prevent livelihood loss for vulnerable rural households, particularly in the face of likely future droughts. This could include measures like agricultural insurance, enabling households to diversify their income, and improving access to roads and clean water. By addressing these issues, we can work towards a brighter future for the people of Somalia. 5. Niger. Niger is the fifth poorest country in Africa, with a GDP of $1,213 and a gross national income of $540. Located in the heart of the Sahel, Niger has a poorly diversified economy, with agriculture accounting for 40% of its GDP. In 2021, over 10 million people, or 41.8% of the population, were living in extreme poverty. Niger is also grappling with an influx of refugees fleeing conflicts in Nigeria and Mali, and is trapped between the armies of the Islamic State and Boko Haram. The country is simultaneously experiencing an explosion in its birth rate and chronic drought. While the poverty rate is expected to stabilize in 2021 and 2022, the absolute number of poor in Niger is projected to continue to stagnate due to sluggish growth, low human capital, labor market weaknesses, and exposure to shocks. To overcome this extreme poverty, Niger should invest in education and in the health and well-being of its population. It should also consider implementing family planning and seeking hunger assistance from outside organizations, as well as working to improve food and water security and expanding economic opportunities. 6. Malawi. Malawi is the sixth poorest country in Africa, with a GDP of $1,234 and a gross national income of $500. Over 70% of Malawians earn less than the UN poverty level wage of $1.90 per day, and most of the country's workers are employed in agriculture, which is plagued by increasingly common droughts and floods. Farmers are too poor to buy tractors and fertilizers, and the country's Lake Chilwa has largely dried up, putting 7,000 fishermen out of work. So, what can be done to overcome poverty in Malawi? One solution could be to invest in the country's infrastructure, which could help the economy grow and diversify into sectors like energy, telecommunications, banking, manufacturing, information technology, and tourism. There should also be a focus on enhancing agricultural productivity and improving non-farm employment options, as well as on improving school completion rates, particularly for girls, and redirecting existing social programs to target households exposed to climate shocks. By addressing these issues, we can work towards a brighter future for the people of Malawi. 7. Mozambique. Mozambique is the seventh poorest country in Africa, with a GDP of $1,331 and a gross national income of $460. Nearly two-thirds of the population lives in poverty, and the country is among the most unequal in sub-Saharan Africa. While there is some income in Mozambique, the $871 disparity between GDP and NI shows that it is not reaching Mozambicans. This is partly due to the country's increased dependence on large extractive projects, with limited linkages to the rest of the economy, as well as low-productivity agriculture. Poverty rates in Mozambique, particularly in rural areas, have also been on the rise due to a crisis generated by decreasing foreign direct investment, natural disasters, and military attacks in the north and center of the country. To achieve inclusive poverty reduction in Mozambique, policies that increase access to basic quality services like education, healthcare, sanitation, and electricity, as well as access to labor markets and means of production, can be crucial. By addressing these issues, we can work towards a future where the people of Mozambique have the opportunity to thrive. 8. Liberia. Liberia is the eighth poorest country in Africa, with a GDP of $1,413 and a gross national income of $530. Founded in the 1820s as a refuge for former American slaves, Liberia has struggled to recover from a brutal civil war that damaged its economy and led to widespread youth unemployment. Currently, about 35% of males and 42% of females are unable to find jobs due to a lack of skills and training. the share of the population living below the international extreme poverty line was 34.6% in 2022, up from 31.1% in 2019 and 27.6% in 2016. Negative growth in private consumption and the Ebola epidemic in 2014 have left the country to face considerable economic challenges on its own. To lift more Liberians out of poverty, there will need to be greater public and private investment in activities that create jobs and improve human capital. This could include investments in health, education, access to water and sanitation, rural roads, markets, and agricultural productivity improvements. By addressing these issues, we can work towards a brighter future for the people of Liberia. 9. South Sudan. Did you know that South Sudan is the 9th poorest country in Africa, with a GDP of $1,420 and a gross national income of $1,090? It's no secret that the economy of South Sudan is one of the most underdeveloped in the world. But did you know that this country also has some of the highest infant mortality rates and illiteracy rates among women in the world? And did you know that South Sudan has a population that's super young, with over 40% of people under the age of 14? But here's the thing. South Sudan is also full of natural resources like oil, gas, iron, chromium, tungsten, copper, gold, silver, and diamonds. Talk about a mix of challenges and potential. And the income disparity in South Sudan is severe. The average per capita daily income is $3.20, but 90% of the population lives on less than $1 a day. So, what can be done to overcome poverty in South Sudan? One way is to invest in the agribusiness sector to alleviate poverty, promote food security, and improve living conditions. The government can also help by improving access to education, quality healthcare, and reducing the imbalance in infrastructure development between urban and rural areas. 10. Sierra Leone. You may not have heard of Sierra Leone, but it's actually the 10th poorest country in Africa, with a GDP of $1,608 and gross national income of $1,670. Can you believe it? 60% of the rural population lives in poverty, and even 20% of the urban population is poor. Wow, that's a lot of people struggling to make ends meet. So, what's going on in Sierra Leone? A big part of the problem is corruption in the government, a lack of a solid education system, a lack of civil rights and poor infrastructure. And if that wasn't enough, Sierra Leone has also been hit hard by civil war and the Ebola epidemic, not to mention natural disasters like mudslides. Around 2/3 of the population relies on subsistence farming, growing rice to get by. But here's something interesting. Sierra Leone is one of the poorest countries in Africa, with a higher NI than GDP. How is that possible? It's because expats from Sierra Leone are able to send substantial amounts of money back home to their families. So, what can be done to help eradicate poverty in Sierra Leone? One thing is for the government to prioritize reforms like increased investment in education and improvements in the quality of education. This will give citizens more opportunities to access formal employment and help businesses expand and demand more skilled employees. Conclusion. As we wrap up our exploration of the 10 poorest counties in Africa in 2023, it's clear that there is still a long way to go in terms of reducing poverty and improving living standards on the continent. From the rural regions of DRC to the war-torn streets of South Sudan, these countries face a host of challenges in their quest for prosperity. However, it's important to remember that there is always hope and that change is possible. With the right policies, resources, and support, it's possible to lift communities out of poverty and onto a path of sustainable growth. So let's continue to work together and do our part to make a difference in the lives of those who need it the most. Remember, every small act of kindness counts, and together, we can create a brighter future for all. Thank you for watching the video. Please subscribe, like, share, comment and hit the notification button. Good day. Good night. Cheers.